On today's podcast, Michael Penn. Michael is a college professor who has a YouTube channel helping people to understand mathematics better. We discuss the difference between teaching a class of 20 versus knowing your online content has over 60 million views, why he enjoys creating the videos he does, and even what he thinks of math in the movies. Enjoy the conversation. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You have, as I do, a YouTube channel. In fact, I was just looking at your numbers, actually. You and I have almost identical subscriber numbers.
I know, I think you just passed me.
I've just got, about a day ago, I went to 290,000 and you're still languishing at 288. Yeah, indeed. So I'm in a whole different...
echelon.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, it's amazing you're talking to the little people like me anymore.
We are talking to someone that's got a better grasp of vocabulary than me, if nothing else. So that, though, is where the similarity ends, because my YouTube is, I try as hard as possible to explain to people, hopefully get motivated and entertained by this, but please don't pay too much attention to it because I haven't got a clue what I'm doing half the time. Yours wouldn't work on that basis. Explain, what's your channel all about?
So my channel is about math. So I started my channel like in 2019 to help with the courses that I'm teaching. I'm a college professor here in the United States. And then it's kind of morphed into a popular math channel.
So on day one, it was only for students?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So it was like lectures. So in the like education space, there's this popular thing to do where you record lectures ahead of time and your students will watch them before class, and then you'll spend class just doing problems together.
Okay.
So it's like called a flipped classroom or something. So yeah, for the first, in a couple months, it was just like that kind of stuff, only for my students.
That's interesting, actually, because 2019, obviously pre-COVID, that's right. That must have been quite conveniently timed in that sense, at least. So you had content to keep throwing at them during that, I guess.
Oh yeah, I was like perfectly set up. So all my colleagues were like totally stressed.
Yeah.
When COVID hit and we were teaching online, but I had sort of like pre-adapted to it. Of course, like I lost the best part of the system that I had, which was like everyone working together in class. That's lost when you go remote, but still, it was at least sort of a salvageable situation.
And at what point then did you realize, because it's a little bit like the Facebook story with smaller numbers, in that obviously it started for universities only and then kind of spread out from beyond there. At what point did you twig, oh, more people are listening to this or watching this than just my students?
Yeah. So there's this whole like group of people on YouTube that make popular math videos, and I had like been watching some of them for a couple years before I started my channel, and I made this like follow-up video to a really popular math YouTuber, and then I did this thing which now I know is like really not, it's kind of frowned upon, and I commented about my video in his comments.
Oh yeah, well, why not? Yeah.
Yeah, but he took kindly to me and saw the comment and then watched the video and was like, hey, this is like pretty cool. And this guy has like some other really good content. And then he like did a shout out.
I don't think there's, for any smaller YouTubers listening, I don't think there's any problem with doing that at all.
I totally agree. Yeah.
It happens. And it's obviously being done 99% of the time for them to try and get a little bit of traction on their own video. I completely get that. Yeah. But in the comments section, it's not like they're kind of wading into your video in any real sense. So I'm all for that. I have people do it to me often, and if I watch what they've done and it's good, I'll happily give them a shout. And if it gives them a bump, good. And if what they've done sucks, then I just ignore it and move on.
Yeah, I think it's totally fine. And so that took me to like 1,000 subscribers or something, and then I did like a Q&A with him on his channel. This guy's name's Steve Chow, Black Pen, Red Pen. He's got like 1.3 million subscribers now. And then that kind of carried me to 10 or 15,000 subscribers. And then it like grew very, very quickly to 100K and then started slowing down. And now I'm like growing at a snail's pace.
It is weird, isn't it? People that have no, and why would they? No idea what the kind of growth, the standard growth pattern is for YouTube. It does seem to be that you have sort of surges initially, because it can be born from just one video. You know, one video can take someone to 100,000 subscribers almost.
Right.
But once you get beyond that, you need to have kind of consistently well-performing videos. Otherwise, it tapers off quite brutally. I've had a couple of instances where I've looked at it 2 or 3 months in a row and thought, wow, that exponential growth is not looking very exponential anymore. And then it comes back, and you know, you sort of roll with it. And as soon as you step back a little bit, you see a trend that is, I mean, you're the maths guy, you probably see this more than me. I just look at the graph and think, well, it's going upwards still. That will do. You're probably doing some formulas in your head that tells you.
No, I'm not.
So that's interesting, because you're obviously making. I mean, how many's in a class? 30 kids in a class? What I'm guessing.
No. So I work at So I think that this is not really a thing that exists so much outside of the U.S. There are these so-called small liberal arts colleges. So they're mostly private colleges, and they're like, so my school is around 700 students.
Right.
So I think it would be anything under 3,000 or 4,000 students would be a small liberal arts college. And my school, at least, only like the classes are 20 students or fewer. And I was doing this flipped classroom model on upper division classes, which is just mostly math majors, you know, maybe some physics majors or some engineering majors. And so there were maybe a dozen students in the class.
Okay. Pretty small. It's interesting when you say what happens outside the US. In terms of what happens in the UK, I left school at just after turning 15, so I would have no idea anyway. So, so I'm as educated on the UK system as I am the American one. Okay, so but you've got a small number of kids then watching this stuff before you then turn up at class, and then suddenly you've got thousands of people instead seeing it. That must be that's quite an interesting dynamic. I mean, I remember when I did my first videos, in my head I'd be thinking, well, this is almost comparable to doing stand-up, which I've done a little bit of, where you might have 20 people in a room sometimes 5 in a room, and suddenly you have 500 people see you on a video, and it's almost hard to get your head around those numbers, even at those relatively small levels.
Right.
It's a bit of a weird one.
I remember a couple of like really, really small metrics that meant a lot to me. Like when I had more subscribers than the number of students in my college.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was like a pretty big metric, even though that was like 600 subscribers. And then right when I started having more than 24 hours of watch time in a day.
Yes.
So more watch time than there are hours in a day. That was a cool metric too. Of course, like, I mean, for most people, you know, that's still like a good metric, but you know, after some growth, and obviously at the size that both of us are at now, that is relatively small. I think it's like amazing. So I'm like obviously in the education space, and I think that the ability to like spread knowledge, you know, if it's obviously done via the people that know things, it's just like an amazing product of, you know, the platform.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to ask you in a bit about because obviously I'm in the fitness sphere, and it can be that, and it can be the opposite of that. But we'll come back to that. So you're growing at the kind of traditional sort of small YouTuber rate, and then what kind of elevated that? Was it a video, or was it just kind of organic and steady growth? What boosted it?
Yeah, so I think it was like a 1-2 punch of that interaction with Steve Chow, and then also COVID.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously, like students started watching videos. Students from other universities and colleges started watching videos once COVID hit, because they needed like to understand their classes. Yes. But then also a fairly large amount of my viewership, I think they're like people who maybe have technical careers and maybe wanted to study only math or maths.
Yes.
But didn't do that, and so they're sort of like reliving all the classes that they really liked, and so they were like just sitting at home, done with their work for the day, and they couldn't go out, and so they were watching my videos as well.
Because your stuff is complicated. I mean, that's the best way to describe it, in the sense that I don't understand it. So what's interesting to me is, and yet some of your videos, when I was just clicking through your channel before we came on, if I have a video that does 1 million views, for example, that's a really, really good video. And it happens a few times, but that's a really, really good one. And it tends to be on the videos that are, someone's running around a track. It's as complicated as that to grasp. Anybody can just watch my video, and as long as they understand what running is, they're good to go. They can be 100 years old, they can be 5 years old. My reach is broad. Your stuff, I'm looking at your videos, 1.4 million, 1.3 million, 1.1 million, 1 million, a bunch with hundreds of thousands. And yet most people, the average person, me included, can't watch your videos and just absorb it. You've got a much smaller, I'm assuming a much smaller group of people.
I think my 1 million+ view videos are mostly fairly simple stuff.
Okay.
That being said, I think there's one that's like about a differential equation, F prime equals F inverse. That one has a lot of views. I think if you step back a little bit and think about how many kids are taking calculus in university, or even the last couple of years of high school, that's a very, very large number. And all of them could understand a lot of my videos.
That's interesting, actually, with the age groups, because obviously behind the scenes on a YouTube channel, you can see whether it's male, female, what ages are looking at your stuff, where the people are located geographically. Are you seeing that predominantly you've got youngsters? Is that the main demographic?
No. I'm about equally split. So college age is maybe not the highest. It's maybe second highest.
Right.
I think that the highest demographic is like 25 to 34.
Right.
And then next after that is like 34 to however far they take it up after that.
I mean, is anybody over 50 even watching?
Yeah. And I get emails. I get emails from people who are like retired engineers and stuff. I actually get more emails from people who are retired from technical careers than I get from anyone else. I think it is probably just people in that age group are more apt to email someone out of the blue.
And for me, it's almost the reverse of that, in that when I get someone who's 16 emails me, or they don't tend to email, they tend to DM on Instagram or something, and they say, this is awesome, I'm a bit overweight, but I've started running because I'm watching your videos. And I think that, and when they say, as they often do, oh, I'm not your demographic, but, and I'm like, no, dude, if you're enjoying the video, then you're exactly the demographic. I mean, it's just, it's for whoever. So it's cool that you've got people for whom there's no kind of, I was going to say this probably sounds terrible to a math professor, but there's no need. Once you're 50, you could not learn any more math, and you would you'd cope for the rest of your life. I can prove that because I stopped learning it at 15, and I've yet to encounter any significant problems. Especially once they launched the iPhone, I could add up on there. I was flying.
I think it's great. I think like people in that age group who, I'm almost in that age group. I'm 44, who are still like trying to better themselves in one way or the other, be it like fitness or be it like being a lifelong learner. It's great. I think. Yeah.
And YouTube is brilliant for that. One of the things that's interesting with the fitness world is that you can get incredible information that is very beneficial to have, and you can get appalling information that is just it just improves no one's life whatsoever, other than the person that's churning it out to you and making money from it. That's the only person that gains from that. So I pitch myself very firmly in the motivation and entertainment, because I am so frightened's the wrong word. I just don't want to be in that world of right and wrong that does exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess with your stuff, it's an interesting one because there is literally right and wrong. I mean, are there
that's
people
right.
out there doing the sort of content you're doing that you watch and you think, what is this? This is just
I haven't
wrong.
seen anyone.
Right. Because I guess it would stand out a bit more clearly.
Right. That's the thing with math. Like with a lot of the sciences, people can, massage data one way or the other and make arguments for things being true or false. Hey, this is the right way to eat. No, this is the right way to eat. And people will believe both sides or whatever. But with math, no, there's like, it's correct or it's not correct. And there's no argument. There's no sides.
Right is right and wrong is wrong. Have you, because the sort of content that I've seen, the kind of mathematical stuff or the problem solving stuff that has done really well on YouTube, the only way I've really encountered it is on the slightly kind of sort of stereotypical problem solving that everyone's heard of. The puzzles about open this number of doors and what's the probability of there being this prize behind that door, and all this sort of.
I would say like things that defy expectation.
Yes, the perfect way of describing it. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, you're talking about like the Monty Hall problem.
Yeah,
like, everyone hears the solution to that and they're like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Right, and that sort of stuff does well. Does the appeal of that and the potential views that come with it not lead you down that path?
I think my current audience wouldn't be interested in something like that. Perhaps I could grow a new audience with something like that, but then like the new audience wouldn't be interested in the bulk of my content that I put out. Also, like I'm not really interested in problems like that.
Which is the main. That's the main one, isn't it? You got to like what you're doing.
And also, I think that I have a type of problem or a type of math that I'm good at explaining, and I don't think that's it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and given like, I still have my other job or whatever, given sort of the time constraints with that, I like really try to stick to things that I can produce efficiently. And I have done things that defy expectation, but are more maybe pinpointed towards the type of people that watch my content. Like I had a big video in the summer about why there's no three-dimensional complex numbers, whatever that means. And that went really well. It was like 250,000, maybe 300,000 views. And that's something that I think someone who watches my type of content or is interested in my type of content, like sort of like, I don't, advanced math is not really the right word, but like semi-advanced math.
Sure.
They would look at a question like that and be like, oh yeah, why isn't there? That's interesting. That sort of defies expectation, doesn't make any sense. So I have like tailored that to the type of content and the type of viewer that I have, but not really. Because
would the goal for you be, I mean, if your channel just kept growing, mm-hmm. would the, did you look at that and think that'd be just a cool thing to do all the time as my only, is getting to a place where that becomes full-time YouTube? Is that even an objective? Because for some people that wouldn't be something they'd want to do, full stop.
Yeah, that's a good question. I really like my other job.
Yeah.
So probably not. So I'm on sabbatical this year, so I'm not teaching this year. And I've like really missed teaching. I mean, there is like something that happened. There was this huge cheating scandal in one of my classes that I had to take students to the judiciary board and stuff. I can't really say anything more than that because of like secrecy rules or whatever, but that really soured me on teaching quite a bit. And I was really lucky that I had sabbatical just a year to only focus on research, and YouTube. Don't tell my school. But now I'm like sort of getting over my soured feeling for teaching, and I'm excited to teach again. And also, like, I still want to stay like active with research, And it's hard to do that if you don't have an academic affiliation. One thing that I would do potentially if the channel got big enough would be I would take a part-time teaching job or do something like that.
I think people sometimes don't realize quite how time consuming it is to do a YouTube channel. I mean, even if you're doing it as efficiently as possible, it's still sucking up some time. And so it's I'm quite lucky in that I could just go out and do an event with people, or whatever, running, cycling, whatever it might be. And so I don't have to spend my entire world just sat in front of my camera, but I have to almost force myself to book those things in to go and do them. Otherwise I would do. And very quickly it becomes less of an attractive proposition. I mean, people think, wow, you know, be a YouTuber, you just sit at home and talk to your camera all day and it's easy peasy. And it's potentially quite good money, relatively speaking. But yeah, you've got to wake up in the morning and look forward to doing your day's work. And if that isn't ticking that box, then that doesn't work.
I think kids, when they think about like being a YouTuber and how fun it is, they look at all of these really young YouTubers who their channel is just essentially hanging out with their friends all the time and doing crazy stuff. And of course that looks fun, but you know, that's not a long-term channel. Like my channel can exist like for me for many, many years because it's just me doing math, right? It doesn't rely on me being like quirky and young, right?
There's more to it than just the assumption that everybody wants to be a giant YouTuber. One of the things that you've done, which I thought was fascinating, and it kind of ties into this again with, do you want to do that though? You climb, as in rock climbing, and you've done a couple of, I guess you'd call them crossover videos, where you're climbing and I was going to say adding stuff up. I'm sure the math is more complicated than that. But I found that stuff fascinating because I understand climbing. I'm not a climber at all, but I've done it, and so I understand the kind of physical demands. And knowing that behind that, I do like this idea that behind quite everyday natural things, they're still, those things still have to adhere to the laws of physics and math and so on. I mean, those things still apply. And so I found those really interesting. And in fact, as I was watching a couple of them, I thought there's so many opportunities to kind of go down this road. I mean, I was almost annoyed that I hadn't stayed on at school past 15 because I could have done some of them. But yeah, the idea of working out, if one person weighs whatever 220 pounds and is doing chin-ups, and another person weighs 160 and is doing chin-ups, who's working harder than the other, and just all those things. I have it a lot where people say to me, "Oh, well, you're on a bicycle, you're very powerful." I am, but I'm also very heavy. But what if you go up a hill, or what if you're going down a hill? And the math behind all that, I don't understand, but would genuinely find fascinating. We should probably do a collaboration where you follow me in with a calculator. So what made you think I'll combine the two in the first place? Did you enjoy doing it? And is there a plan to do any more? And if not, why not?
Yeah, I don't know what really spurred me to do the first one. I kind of just wanted to. I don't really remember why.
That's good enough reason.
There was this, I follow some climbing YouTube, and there was this Magnus Mitbo 9C challenge.
Yeah.
This like climbing fitness test challenge that was going around climbing YouTube when he was a much smaller YouTuber.
Yeah, because he's now big.
And I was like, I was like, he had like 50K subscribers or something. Maybe at the moment I had more than he did. And then I was like, oh, I want to do this test and see what happens. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll just film it and then also do some problems from the Norwegian Math Olympiad and like cut it together. And so I did. And the video did medium, not great, but it was like enjoyable to do. And then for a long time, I planned to do something else. And I finally put it together. And this was me doing a climbing a route. So it's like a 13A and Rifle, which is this place I go every summer, like 7C plus in European grades. And then stopping at this no hands knee bar in the middle and doing a math problem. I like carried up a whiteboard. And that video didn't do very well at all. Like I even like pulled out all the stops to make it get better better views. Like I posted about it on Instagram, which I never do. I made a community post, which I never do. I asked like this guy I know who's a really big math Instagrammer to post about it, which I never do. But it never did really well. But it did show up in a climbing forum, which was interesting. And then a lot of my students, so I taught at the school in Colorado for a while, and a lot of my students there were also climbers. And some of them posted in the comments like, hey, that was my professor.
Yeah.
And so am I planning on doing anything else? Not at the moment. I've got actually some pretty, what I think are good ideas for fitness math crossovers. The best idea that I have, which I haven't really put together. Do you know what the beer mile is?
Yes. I've not done it because I don't like beer, but I've seen it done and I'm certainly aware of it. Yeah.
So I have this idea of the math mile, where instead of drinking a beer between every lap, you do a math problem.
Does that not is there not a beer is a constant amount? Everyone knows what a beer is. Does the math problem not is that not too varied a task to set?
Well, it would be a race.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be just one person. So because of course, like if it was just one person, you couldn't gauge it,
Yes.
right? But you could have a race with like several people
And the same problem
and
for
they
all
were
of them
all
to
doing
do.
the same problem.
Yeah. It's kind of like jock meet nerd. The fitness and the maths thing is it's interesting you mentioned you tried it and it didn't do very well. And also you enjoyed it. I have a few videos where I've done exactly that. They've been real kind of personal projects of enjoyment for me that I've hit upload and just thought, I loved making that. And I watched it back before I upload it. I think that's just a really good fun. It ticks all the boxes. It's going to do well. It can't not do well. It might not go viral because who knows, but it's going to do okay. And it just tanks. So I understand the frustration, but also I also don't believe that it means too much necessarily. Yeah, if I'd done 10 of those vanity projects and they'd all been rubbish, then maybe. But I think 1, 2, 3. Sometimes you just never know. I mean, a good example is that one of my top ever videos is a Kipchoge, the marathon runner video about him. And I've replicated that video a number of times in different sort of ways, with little kids, with adults, with just me on a giant treadmill, all sorts of different versions of it. Some of those versions go and get 1 million plus, and some of those versions no one watches. So I don't worry too much about that. I think that anyone that tries something and really enjoys it until they've done it 4 or 5 times, don't kind of discount the idea. One thing I was curious about with yourself and the math side of things. I watched Oppenheimer just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And every now and again, behind the scientists, there'll be a blackboard and there'll be loads of formula written on it. That as someone who doesn't understand that, just sees it and it passes me by. It means nothing to me, other than it means that they are presumably supposed to be intelligent because they wrote it. And I wondered, because I have this, I spoke recently with a chap that used to fly for the US Navy. And so it actually was a graduated Top Gun and was a weapons school instructor. And so we're talking about watching the movies and does he care that it's wrong in the movies, basically? And he didn't. And it was interesting because when I used to work in finance. When I look at movies like whatever, The Wolf of Wall Street or something, or even Wall Street itself, there are clearly mistakes in there, but they're not really mistakes. They're just sort of theatrical license. And as someone that knows that's wrong,
that's how I take.
I was going to say, when you see math in movies, are you, when you're watching Good Will Hunting, are you seeing the errors or not, and becoming frustrated at that, or just laughing it off?
Well, I think that if you look at like blackboards and stuff and movies, they generally just have like famous equations on them. And one line will not have anything to do with the next line.
Right. I wonder if that might be the case. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like set dressing. And the math is so hard that they're not going to say anything specific about it. So they can't get it wrong. I mean, some movies have done a better job than others. Like, I haven't seen this movie, but there's this movie called The Man Who Knew Infinity. It's about Ramanujan.
Right.
And I know the mathematician, sort of, that was the advisor, the mathematical advisor to that movie. And they did a really good job about, all of the equations and making sure that it wasn't just set dressing, that it was actually math going on. And even though I haven't seen the movie, I've seen him, this guy, Ken Ono, he's really famous in math world, give talks about what he did for the movie. I don't know how common that is, though, in film.
No, I wonder, because sometimes when you watch films that are, for me, finance-based, it's as though no one on set had a clue.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter because it just doesn't really matter. It's not supposed to be real. But I know, watching Oppenheimer, there's a couple of scenes where the scientists are sort of handed just a page of numbers, and they kind of glance at it for a couple of seconds and go, "This can't be right," and they pass it to the next guy. And I watch that and think, well, I guess they see that instantly, and it all makes sense. And I wonder if there are people that actually understand that. No, you'd need to spend hours going through that to work out. You can't just look at it and go wrong.
Yeah, whenever I see things, I can't tell right away if something is reasonable or not. The true situation would be like someone would see something and they'd be like, "Oh, that is interesting." And then you'd get an email from them in the middle of the night being like, "Oh, I don't think that's right."
Actually,
because they thought about it all day
I could,
until they figured it out.
That I can imagine. I was going to say, with contact from people that watch your stuff, I suppose in your world you don't get, or maybe you do because it's the world still, idiots that contacting you being it, or do you? I mean, I get some pretty horrendous stuff sometimes.
No, I don't get any sort of negative emails. I get emails that are, "Hey, you're helping me relive my love for math," or "Hey, you helped me through this class," or "Here's a nice problem to try," without solution. Or my favorite is, "Here's a nice problem to try, and here's the complete solution," because that's great. You just made my content. And there's this one person who sends me emails like that, and I love it.
You need to give him a credit each time you put the video up for them.
Yeah, I do. And then there's this one class of email which is hilarious, which is, "Oh, you made a mistake at 3:15 in this video, but then it was fixed on the next board, just FYI." And I'm like, cool dude.
Yeah, you sound like you are dodging because of your content. You're dodging a whole part of the YouTube experience, which is correspondence with lunatics, because most of us out here are having to. I mean, I get those life change. Actually, it's interesting because some of the people that have their lives changed by fitness, it's a transformation that's taken them away from literally potentially being dead. I mean, for some people it is that. It's, I was 450 pounds and now I'm not. I might well be alive in 10 years and I probably wouldn't have been otherwise.
Yeah.
So some of the good stories are incredible, and bring a tear and then some to your eye when you realize the power you've had on someone, or the impact you've had on somebody. But the flip side of that is people just being just bonkers. And because there is no right or wrong,
I can't imagine.
Yeah, and in your world, you seem to have dodged that. I mean, it's quite unusual to have nearly 300,000 subscribers and not get. I'm trying to think of another niche where you could have that many subscribers and not have that daily issue to deal with. But one thing I was going to ask, just to kind of wind up, do you ever get recognised out and about? Has that started happening to you yet?
Yeah, that's happened twice. And it was both times at rock climbing area.
I was going to say, where? That's quite funny that it's in the sports world. Yeah, I'm not surprised actually.
Yeah, so there's this place called Rifle Mountain Park where I go climbing every summer, and there was a person there who was an astronomy or astrophysics PhD who recognized me from my math videos. And then I was out climbing in North Carolina, and someone looked at me and was like, "Hey, do I know you? Do you go to this climbing gym or this climbing gym or this climbing gym?" And then I was like, "Hey, do you watch math on YouTube?" And then we figured it out. You know, that being said, I haven't been to like a big math conference. I was invited to give a talk at this like science festival in Trondheim, Norway last March, and I went. And there were like lots of, you know, what I would call fans.
Yes.
And of course, like I was invited there to be there because of this or whatever. But that was the time when I was around lots of people who were like real psyched about me being there.
And that must be cool, because I guess you get into teaching because you want to help people. You want to see people be better off because they heard from you, and to know that you've gone from, you know, 10, 20, 30 people in a classroom to potentially 1 million plus on some videos. That must be almost hard to get your head round in terms of the scope of your ability to now help.
Yeah, it's really wild.
You know, when you are confronted on a daily basis by your YouTube feed presenting you people with millions of subscribers, it's sometimes easy to think you're at the bottom of that pile, but the bottom of that pile is still way above 99% of other people. No, it's cool. If people want to watch your stuff, where can they go? How can they find you? Where's your?
Yeah, you can go to youtube.com/Michael Penn Math.
Okay.
Or you can search YouTube for Michael Penn Math.
Easy peasy. And at some point, when they do that, they'll find a video of you and me doing something athletic and you teaching me numbers. That's on my agenda now.
We'll
I need to think of something that I can do consistently enough that we can.
Maybe we could do the math mile together, and
I don't know that you know.
And then
a math.
And then you still beat me, even though it takes you 10 times as long to do the math problem because I can't run for hell.
Yes, the problem we have with that is that you can physically put a foot in front of the other. That makes you a better runner than I am mathematician. What I do is I WhatsApp my kid and ask one of them. I pick the smartest one of them, which is a challenge in itself, and then just ask them. Cool. It's been awesome talking. I love talking to other YouTubers, especially when they're doing something that is so different to what I do. To then find the similarities is fun. Thanks for your time. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah. It's been really fun.